Today is an honor to present you this top tier motherboard coming from Gigabyte, known as the Aorus Xtreme X3D AI Top. I'd like to thank Gigabyte to have loaned me this unit to share with everyone, and to Tech Dynamic to have done the arrangement on the delivery. First off, the package is very heavy and is very big, as you can see. And you will be receiving a crest, which is the Aorus crest at the front, and what's inside the box. Now, as mentioned, this is very heavy. See the whole box. Now, inside the box there are flaps which is surrounding it, see, at the side, and these are magnetic, inclusive the back. And you will be, shown with this here to the extreme. And right inside the box, at the top section, you have the E-ATX motherboard, which I will go through with you guys. And you have tons of goodies. Okay, let me just lift this up. Oops. I almost dropped that. A wine opener. And you have a badge or crest, or should I say the PC crest, and a mug. Nicely done for over the 39 years. In fact, this is the celebration of Gigabyte 39 year, or should I say this year is the 40th year. Now, there are the other compartments which I will show you into details. Okay, probably I'll just pull off, hope I don't drop. So there's stuff over here, stuff over here. You have the USB BAC cable, and this is the RAM, fan and such, which I'll go into details also. And at this end, okay, probably I'll just pull this out so that I don't drop it. And at this end, these are all the accessories. See, I know I'm gonna drop it. See, this is actually the accessory package which I'll talk about it. And you have all this. This is the contact frame. And I believe these are all the instruction manual and such. See? In fact, this package is full of accessories, which most of it I'll go into details. And of course, you have this sticker. Nicely done. These are all the items I removed off from the box, and to show you in depth on how it looks like. Starting off with the gift set. You will be provided with this wine opener, as I mentioned. There's a logo over here. And this whole piece is made of metal. Nice touch. And there's a blade over here to remove off the wrapper of your wine. Next will be this mug, where you have this sticker that sticks. Legacy Aorus 39 years old. Meaning say it's celebrating its 39 years old for providing all the good Aorus Master products to the public. In fact, this was printed last year, so it's 39. For this year, right, starting off with the 40th year. And this mug is in fact a 354 ml mug. And how do I know that? Based on the fact that it's printed below, 12 ounce, 354. And this is designed in Seattle by this company. Now, this is in print, right? Same goes to the Aorus label. Else for this, right, this is actually a sticker. And at the top, you have this cap, where you open up the opening, you can sip the water through. And keeping this cap on is by a round gasket. Yeah, probably you guys might be saying, hey, crazy Kill, you are doing the motherboard, how come you're showing all the details? Well, that's the main game of my channel, showing you guys the details. Next, this is the case badge. Okay, a very nice logo and the label. You have seen this, which I've shown you, which is the contact frame. Okay, if you fancy to use this, this will somehow, will not bend your processor, but I feel that, to me, this is not necessary. It's just, the premium feel of this product. Okay, next you will have this very big piece of cover. Well, this is actually meant for your RAMs, which I'll show you later, because you have a active fan over here to blow your RAMs. And one thing fantastic about this is that how you activate the fan is not through any cable or connection. It's through this magnetic point, which I'll show you later. It's pretty beefy. I believe you can put tall ramps. Nice. Next, you have this M.2 heatsink. Wow, this is very, beefy, and it does have a passive fan again. And they made use of the technology to connect this. Okay, these are the polarity pin, if I'm not wrong, to mount on your motherboard. So there are no loose cables and such. And on top of which, right at the top, where you see the Xtreme word, this is of argb. And you have subtle logo over here, the Aorus series. This is a whole chamber pipe, okay, connecting from the base of your M.2 to the pin stack. Nice thought, but it's pretty beefy though. Okay, I'll start off with all the mystery boxes over here. Starting with the top over here, this are all the instruction manual. Okay, just have to be careful when I remove them. See, the user manual, pretty thick. You have the installation guide, multilingual. Okay, not gonna go this. Not gonna go through with that. And of course, a flyer of stickers with all the Aorus and the logo and such. And this theme on the motherboard is known as Team Up Fight On. Alright, I'm gonna place this here. Hopefully nothing scratches. Now, this box, essential USB DAC, whereby if you have a headset, instead of plugging to your motherboard, right, which does not have a DAC, you can make use of this. So when you plug this in, right, there will be a glow over here, okay, indicating that it's connected to your motherboard. And by the way, this is making use of a Type-C connector. And over here is in fact just a 3.5 millimeter socket for you to plug your headset, which is analog. So it's analog to digital, where this whole unit is a DAC. Nicely done. Okay, next we have this, and this is, let's see what this is for. I just got to be careful when you unwrap it because I worry that it might just break. Oh, okay. Their famous G connector. Okay, where you have the okay, this is meant for your front I/O, whereby all your case connectors, right, as you can see over here. Okay, hopefully you can see. So you have the power LED, the reset and hard disk and such. So this is where you connect your case cable, right, to it, and this is to be mounted to your motherboard instantly. So when you remove the front I/O connectors, right, you can just pull out the whole thing. Next, you have this proprietary fan connectors, whereby this end, right, will connect to your motherboard. Now, this motherboard is pretty unique. They do not have the standard 4-pin PWM connector. In fact, they just have one socket for you to plug here, and it splits into 3. So you have a total of 7 over here. Sorry, 6. 3 over here, 3 over here. So this is how it works, which I'll show you later. Followed by this is, let's see. Oh, okay. Velcro stripe for you to do cable management. 2 sensor probe, where one end connects to the motherboard, the other end, which is the probe, to sense the temperature on your component. Same goes with this. Okay, last but not least, this big box. I believe these are the more essential stuff. Okay, now based on the fact I did test this unit out before I show you guys, so do be mindful that some are open. Alright, you have this USB connector. As you know that your motherboard has this USB socket, right? Instead of having that, you have the proprietary connector again, and it splits off to 2 USB 2.0 socket, and with a additional fan 4-pin PWM fan socket. So total, if you do group up, right, you will have 7 fans. See, these are all proprietary, 3 of each, so total 6 plus this 7. Then next you have the SATA cable. Now the SATA cable, if you look closely, right, they are braided. See, nicely done. And this is just, I believe is let's see, 2 set, one which is right angle, one which is straight. And this is again for your front USB USB 3.2 connector, where one end connect to the motherboard, and this end, right, is for you to connect your front IO 3.2, the USB Type A connector, case connector, to here. And next you have all this. Okay, these are the accessories for, okay, this is the cable for argb connection. So you have one connection point to the motherboard, and it splits up to, let's see, 1 2 3 4 5 argb connection point. And last but not least, the antenna, which a lot will feel that, hey, it looks like a PS5. This is the main unit. Before I talk about all the details, I'd like to show you guys on the RAM cover that comes with a active fan and the M.2 shield. Now, starting off with the M.2, in the event if you populate a Gen 5 M.2 that generates tons of heat, this armor shield might not be able to cater for it. See, it's not beefy, so you might want to swap out to use this. And with this massive fin stack and such, definitely your M.2, I mean your Gen 5 M.2 will survive. Now, as mentioned to you, right, there are no cables to connect to this heatsink where you have a active fan. How they do it is based on this pins over here, which touches the board. See? Probably I have to zoom in. Okay, this is the area where the heatsink touches. So the connection is through here. It's very clean. So all is needed, you just plug in your M.2 and to place this. And this will be in place. Nice thought. Now the second thing that I like to talk about, let me just zoom out, which is this. Now if you were to populate RAMs over at this section, right, and you intend to overclock it extremely, and you might fear that there might be heat accumulation, do not worry, you can make use of this. Again, a very nice feature to activate this active fan, which is through this pins over here. And do remember, you have to remove this. In fact, it's written over here, it's telling you to remove this before you connect the DDR Wind Blade Xtreme, which is this. So again, touching this pin to here, so the whole thing will just sit in nicely. See? It's pretty straightforward. Now, there's something about this RAM the RAM cooler. I kind of feel that, okay, the intake is through here at the top, where it blows the air to your RAMs. Yes, it's very practical, but the thing is that it's not logic. Based on the fact, so sorry about this, Gigabyte. This is the top, okay, where you mount the when you mount the motherboard inside the case, right? This is either your 320mm fans or the liquid AIO. It's drawing the hot air out. So with this say, right, the air intake over here, right? Okay, the air intake over here, I feel that it's going against with your liquid AIO or the 3 fans. It will be more ideal that you know, for Gigabyte to place this fan, right, at the top or at the front. Probably I would say at the top is much better because it covers the whole, the whole RAMs instead of the front, because the front, right, you only hit the first section of the RAMs, which is here, not to the back. So I feel that it's more practical to have the fans instead of the side, fighting the air against the top. Have it fans located over here. Probably can put 2. This is my thought. If you intend to purchase this motherboard to use as your main rig, make sure that your case can cater an E-ATX form factor motherboard, as this is very big. The measurement from here to here is at 285mm, and from the top to the bottom is at 305mm. As for the construction of this board, starting from the bottom, you have a stick design with this shiny Aorus logo, the subtle gold line, and right at the top of the line, if you can see here, this is a translucent line where it has argb effect, and this is the only area you have the argb effect. And for the construction of the VRM heatsink, fantastic. These are the traditional pin stack, which I like a lot. It will dissipate tons of heat, and there is a pipe that channel from the side VRM to the rear VRM. On top of which, at the back where the rear IO is, there are ventilated holes, so there will be more heat dissipation. Moving from the back, this is a solid backplate. See, a nice Aorus logo, the crest, and this backplate not only serves the rigidity of the board, it does act as a heatsink for the VRM. Let me just show you. There are thermal pad touches the VRM. Now, besides this, I forgot to mention, for the drilling of holes on the PCB itself, Gigabyte have came out with this so-called back drilling PCB technology, whereby it not only helps to prevent losses of signal on the copper traces, it also helps to improve or to enhance system performance. Okay, moving to the front. Now, something I wish that Gigabyte would provide together with this board, there is a microfiber cloth, because there will be fingerprint all over. Since this is a premium board, I should say. Okay, now for board details, starting on my left, this is a full 5-inch LCD panel. During startup, before load into Windows and before the RAM training cycle, right, it will show you or display the unique video featuring the Aorus logo, which is the chipit and such. And during the process, during the RAM training cycle, it does show you the debug info besides the digital debug, reflecting over here. So it will show you CPU initialization, VRM initialization and such. So it will display over here. If there are errors, right, it will show directly on the LCD. And not only this, when you boot up the system in Windows, this will display all the information stat. Things like CPU temperature, VRM temperature, CPU voltage, CPU clock frequency, memory clock frequency, the fan pump RPM if you are using a liquid AIO, and the case fans. So a very neat function. The only thing is that this LCD, all the stats, right, are fixed. It will just cycle through interval of 5 seconds. So do take note on this. You can't place, custom animation and such. So this is one of the downside. I believe that Gigabyte will do some firmware and might allow you to do customization on this 5-inch LCD. Now, for the power phase of this board, it has 24 plus 2 plus 2, where the 24 that is channeling all the current, right, to your processor. This is at 110 ampere choke. Also the plus 2, which is meant for the SoC on your RAMs, this is also at 110 ampere. Else for the last plus 2, these are miscellaneous, where it has a 60 amp choke. Now, on the center, this is the 1718 socket, where it cater processor like the 9000 series, 8000 series, and the 7000 series. Over here, you have 4 DIMM slot. Okay, probably I want to bring it down. 4 DIMM slot running on dual channel, and it only cater for DDR5 RAMs, and it has a max capacity of 256 gig if you populate all 4. Now, for the max transfer or should I say mega transfer, is up to 9000 MT. Now to the PCIe slot and the M.2. First of all, how to remove all the armor shield and the locking mechanism. Starting off with the M.2 armor shield. For the top slot, there's this button, just press it down and you can just pull out the whole strip. And this whole strip is captured by the magnet at the back. So you align here and just put it back and press it down, and this will be in lock. So this is a toolless design. And as for the bottom section, there is a lever over here, press it down and this will release, and you can just pull the whole armor shield off, and this will expose all the M.2. Now do note that while you are doing this, right, as you can see that the PCIe slot over here are blocked by this. Not to worry, there's this pull label over here, just pull it off so that it will expose the PCIe slot so that you can just plug your card and such. Now I will start off with the PCIe slots. There are total of 3, 1, 2 and 3, where the first two, generation 5, is controlled by the processor and is backward compatible. Else for the bottom section, this is controlled by the chipset, and this is Gen 4. Now as for the speed, the first lane is X16, the second is X8, and the last is X4. Now if you only populate a GPU on the top slot and nothing else, this will run at X16 full. If you were to populate a capture card, a sound card on the second PCIe slot, then it will split the speed. This no longer is X16, it will be a X8, and this will be a X8. I would advise that if you were to want a additional capture card or such, right, plug it to the last slot so that you have your graphic card to run at X16 full. And there is a compromise too if you plug on the last slot. If you were to plug a capture card or a sound card over here, do note your third M.2 slot will be disabled. Same goes to if you plug a M.2 on the third slot, right, your last PCIe slot will be disabled. So take note on this. Now coming to the M.2, you have a total of 5, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, where the first slot and the fourth slot, this is controlled by the processor, and both are of Gen 5 backward compatible, and the speed is of X4. Now in the event if you were to populate both of this is Gen 5, right, and you decided to use the USB version 4 port at the back of your rear I/O, do note it will share lane with your your fourth M.2, where the speed, this is X4, it will become X2. So take note on this. Now for the rest of the M.2, slot 2, slot 3 and slot 5, this is controlled by the chipset, and these are of Gen 4. And as for the speed, these two are of X4, else this is X2. Again, something to note, if you were to populate the third slot, your last PCIe slot will be disabled, or if you populate the PCIe last slot, your third M.2 slot will be disabled. So take note on this. Now for locking on the first PCIe slot and the second PCIe slot is by these two buttons over here. The first slot is with this button, so this is actually at the lock position. Take a look at the metal clip over here. So when you slot your graphic card, right, you don't have to press anything, you just slot it in. But when you want to remove, press the first button. Take note on this latch over here. See, this is unlock. Then use both hands, pull off your graphic card. Else, for the second PCIe slot, this is the button. Take a look at this metal clip over here. See, this is unlocked. So you can just pull out your card. And best thing is that all this PCIe slot, right, is reinforced by metal frame. A nice touch. Please be mindful that on the earlier illustration about the M.2 and the PCIe slot, allocation, inclusive of the speed and the lane sharing. This is only applicable to 7000 series and the 9000 series AMD processor. I've not touched on the 8000 series. If you want to know more information regarding about the lane allocation on the 8000 series, right, probably you can head down to the website. I will not touch on that. Now, something that I noticed, for all this M.2, all the 5 slots, you have a bottom thermal pad with a sponge, and at the top you have all these thermal pads. So assuming that you are using a single-sided M.2, you can just plug it in, remove the tape from the top, and to sandwich it, as this are the support with single-sided M.2. And best part is that each of this plate, right, inclusive of this, is with spring. See? So this will ensure that your M.2 is sandwiched nicely and it will sit cushioned down instead of forcing it. You know, that would be bad for the M.2. It might just bend. So this is a very good thought. Well done. And also another factor is that, as mentioned to you, the first and fourth slot, these are controlled by the CPU. And why did they arrange it first and fifth slot this way? In the event if you were to populate a graphic card, as you know that Gen 5 M.2, right, are generating a lot of heat, right? So at the top it's not so bad because the backplate of the GPU, right, is actually dissipating heat. So together with your Gen 5 M.2, but if you were to populate another Gen 5 at the bottom, this is where the GPU, you know, the AIB cards, it will push the hot air on the M.2, and this will generate even more heat if you place a Gen 5 M.2. So Gigabyte have actually done this deliberately, separating the two Gen 5 M.2 that is controlled by the CPU with the top section and the fourth slot. See, there's a gap over here. So when you plug your graphic card, right, the impact will not be on here, and your second Gen 5 M.2, right, will not throttle. So this is a good thing. Else for this, right, same thing, the allocation is very nice. It's only for Gen 4 or Gen 3, and they don't really generate that much heat. So it's alright to place underneath the graphic card. Well done. Now, another cheeky thing that I find about this board, when I remove off the bottom section, I am greeted with 3 very cute chibits, kind of cheeky, saying hi. See, each have its own expression. For the connectivity of the motherboard is rather unique. First off, where you have the front I/O audio, right, you don't have a physical connection on the motherboard, so you will need to plug. If you have the microphone and headphone with the analog connection, right, which is the 3.5mm jet, you will need to connect to the rear of the I/O. Whereby if you do plug that, well, you can't plug your speakers. So in that event, right, plug your microphone to the rear and to plug your headset to this essential DAC. So this will solve the problem, but of course you will need to plug this to your USB connection point at the back or to the front, so you can have the analog microphone, the headset jet to this. So not too bad. Now besides this, right, you can't find any connection point at the side. You can only find all at the front, whereby you will heavily make use of the proprietary connection. Starting off with the first socket, this is the front I/O, where you connect your reset switch, your power switch, your hard disk LED, and your power switch LEDs. And you will need to connect to this, where there are color code inside. So this is actually for the front I/O. And with this end, right, make sure that this groove, there are 2 grooving, is facing outwards. Then you plug it to the first socket. Make sure that it's snug in nicely. Then over at this end, right, you can't just use your case front I/O connector to connect straight. You will need to use this. Plug to the allocated slot over here, which there are indication over here. Okay, your power, LEDs, your reset switch, your hard disk, and over at this end, your power LED, your power switch, and the speakers. If you have internal speakers, that is. So once you have plugged that right in one whole piece, you can just connect over here. As mentioned to you, if you want to remove right your motherboard and such right, to remove all the front I/O connectors right, you just unplug this. It's quite straightforward. Then followed by two front Type A USB port. So you can connect that to this, not an issue. Normally you will have only one connection point, but for the case itself, if you have additional right, you can make use of both. Then followed by this. This is meant for your USB 2.0 headers, which is, let's see, this. See, on motherboard itself right, if you notice right, there are two USB 2.0 socket. So you will need to plug this again with the grooving pointing at the top, plug to here. Right, make sure you plug it snug. Don't force it, gently. Then this will provide you with two USB 2.0 connection. And additional to it, you have a 4-pin PWM fan socket. Then followed by this, well, this is meant for your argb. Again, using this, you have total of 5 argb connection point over here. It's controlled by just one plug. So you just plug it over here. So if you have fans and such right, all will be into this connection point. The 5, I would say that 5-volt 3-pin argb connectors, okay, which is this. Alright, now next, 2 SATA port. If you were to populate both right, all your M.2s and together with this right, all will work, no an issue. Followed by the USB type C for the front I/O. Now there are a total of 2, one over here, the other is over here. If you have 2, you can make use of both. Next, you have a 8-pin PCIe socket, whereby you connect this to your PSU, and this will serve as a power up to charge whatever you have connect to the USB type C, which is this. Only this port, right? This is only meant for this, and it has a 65-watt charge. And do not charge with this, right? It doesn't work. If you want to charge your laptop, your mobile device, or anything that is 45-watt or 65-watt, you can make use of this, which is on the front I/O. Speaking about the charging port where I located at the front, so this is actually meant for your front I/O type C port. So if you have a laptop, your mobile devices, your tablet, your iPad, etc., you can plug it in. And one thing Gigabyte have included, in fact, they have done a package to the hardware info, as you can see here. So it will list on the charging status, which you can see here, type C port power. So when you plug your device to charge on this port, right, it will indicate over here and how much voltage is being provided and the amperage. And this is the table of all the profile of what can be charged. You can charge any devices which is 15 watt, 27 watt, 45 watt, 60 watt, up to 65 watt. And these are the allocated voltage and amperage. Followed by a 24-pin ATX socket, where you connect your power supply 24-pin cable to this to supply power to your motherboard. Next, you have a USB-C connector. Okay, I'm not too sure why you plug it here. Probably you want to plug the LCD, additional LCD to it. Then followed by 2 fan headers. As I mentioned to you, this board does not have a standard 4-pin PWM connector, so you'll be using this again. And again, with the proprietary connectors, right, the groove over here facing upwards, then you plug it in. So having to plug this, right, it will gives you total of 6 over here, and all this are rated 2 ampere. Okay, having all this, yeah, total of 6 fans, connection point, and one more over here. Now, the thing is that I find it strange why they have arranged it this way. They should have plugged one at the bottom, because imagine that you have rear fans, right? You have to route your rear fan all the way to the front, be it down here or down here. So for the front fan and the top fans, in your case, not a problem. Even the bottom fans, is just that the rear fan, I find it real weird to route it all the way to the front. Now, moving to the side. Okay, let me just remove all this. Or should I say moving to the top? Oops. Yeah, do be careful when you, especially when you remove this from the package. This thing is removable. Okay, and this is actually for aesthetic look, so that you expose all the connection point over here. See? So once you plug your cables in, right, you can just use this to conceal. It will give you a very neat interface. But when you remove this motherboard off from the package, right, do be careful, be mindful of this. This is easily removed, and you might accidentally either scratch it or snap it. So be careful with this. Alright, at the top, what do you have? You have two 4-pin PWM connection point, where the first one is CPU op, and this is for CPU, sorry, the first one is CPU underscore fan. This is whereby majority of the radiator fans or your air cooler fans, right, will connect to. As for the CPU op, now for Gigabyte, you can make use of the CPU underscore op to be a pump connector, okay, because you can control it. Then next you have this temperature sensor, where I mentioned to you, using the sensor probe, you can connect, which is provided, you can connect to here and to sense the temperature of the components that you want to sense. Next, you have two EPS 8-pin connector. A confirmation on this port where I say it's Type C, this is in fact a display port. So you can project out to a portable screen inside the case, probably about 6-inch, 7-inch, around there. But do take note, it only projects up to 1080p at 30 Hz. And over on the surface itself, we have this 3 button over here. Let me just zoom in. Okay, where you have the first button as clear CMOS, the power button, and this is the reset switch. And this reset switch is programmable, where you can program it to turn off the LED on the strip over here, or you can set it to boot to UEFI. So this is programmable on UEFI itself. Now, this is pretty handy, whereby you can test this motherboard outside the case. Okay, moving to the rear, let me just zoom out. Okay, hopefully you guys can see. Let me just zoom in. On the rear itself, starting on the left, you have the Q flash. This is meant for you to do the BIOS flashback without the processor or the RAMs. For more instruction on how to do the Q flash, right, probably look in the instruction manual, and it will guide you through. Or you can click on my description, whereby a gentleman known as Ronin Wow, in fact, he did a wonderful job on how to do a BIOS flashback using Gigabyte motherboard. Now, besides this, right, at the bottom where it has this word say ignition, well, this is for overclockers. I will not go into it. If you guys are interested in overclocking and such, right, probably you can look out for information on the instruction manual. Then followed by a HDMI port. Well, this support 4K at 60 Hz, and this is in fact 4K DCI port, where it's meant for content creation and such. Now, do take note that this make use of the integrated graphic on the processor itself. Then right at the top, you have this 3.5 socket, which is meant for your speaker and your microphone. Now, as I mentioned to you, right, this does not have a front I/O connection for your headset. If you're using analog, right, if you to plug this in, right, you can't plug this to your speakers. So in such event, right, make use of this. Okay, so you free up this where you can plug to your speakers, and this is for your mic. And next you have this SPDIF out. Right at the bottom, you have total of 8 USB type A port. See over here, and all this are USB 3.2. Okay, at the bottom you have 4 USB type C, where the first 2 port, these are USB version 4, and it also acts as a display port. And for the display output is 4K, and it's at 240 Hz, and this is UHD, and it has a transfer rate too if you want to transfer data at 40 gig. Else for this too, right, the first port, this is 20 gig, and this port is at 10 gig. Right at the top, you have 2 RJ45 sockets. These are meant for your LAN connection, and it's up to 10 gig. So we have total of 2. In fact, you can connect one to your internet if your service provider have 10 gig, and the other one you can connect to your Snatch, where the transfer rate is at 10 gig. Well done. And this is the Wi-Fi 7 area, where I mentioned to you, right, this is the antenna, where it has a proprietary connection. So to plug it in, right, you just one motion, plug it in. And if you want to unplug, just pull it out. Okay, I'm not going to plug it in. Now, please be careful with the Wi-Fi antenna and do not break it, right, since it's proprietary. So if you break this, right, you might have to engage Gigabyte and to purchase a new unit. So take note on this. Now, besides the Wi-Fi, right, this is also Bluetooth. Okay, version 5.4. And on top of which, right, on the Wi-Fi 7, this is actually a very strong Wi-Fi 7 adapter, making use of the MediaTek 7927, if I'm not wrong. It has a 320 channel bandwidth signal, rather strong. After installing a fresh copy of Windows 11, when you boot up, on your lower right near the taskbar, it will ask you to install this application known as the Gigabyte Control Center. Just install it, and once you have installed it, this is the interface of the Gigabyte Control Center. Now, this is a piece of art which I will show you. First of all, as you know, when you install Windows 11, right, on your device manager itself, you will see tons of exclamation mark, as you need the drivers in order to clear out the exclamation mark. So most of us during the old days, right, you will need to hit down to the website and to manually download the drivers individually, which is a hassle. So what this application does is pretty straightforward. It will pull all the drivers for you. All is needed, click on the last icon which says Update Center. So when you do this, right, it will list all the drivers. I already installed the drivers, as you can see over here, the update info that I've done, the Wi-Fi drivers, the LAN drivers and such. And of course, in this list, right, there might be some application that you do not need. Take for example this Norton Internet Security. I do not need this at all, so I uncheck it. At the initial start, when you have all the list, right, it's checked with this button called Install. So if you do not want that application, you can just uncheck it and to install. So this will not be installed. Next, the BIOS section. Now, I know that this has the capability of pulling the latest BIOS onto this interface, and you can just update the BIOS. But I would strongly suggest not to do this, based on the fact that this is a software application. So during the process itself, right, what if there's a power surge or there's a cut in power? So while it's in progress of doing the update BIOS, right, it will just prick based on the fact that there's a power surge. So do not prick your board and try not to use this application. I would strongly advise, right, for BIOS update, make use of the BIOS flashback button, which is located at the rear. Read up the instruction menu on how you do the BIOS flashback. And why is it good to do the BIOS flashback? Let me tell you why. Based on the fact that during the process, when you press the BIOS flashback button, it will read and verify the BIOS. At the meantime, right, there is a backup copy of the old BIOS on the EEPROM chip. So even during the process, there's a power surge or such, right, your board will not be pricked because there is a backup BIOS on the EEPROM. So it's a much safer thing to do on the BIOS flashback. Now, besides this, right, this application have tons of function. Let's start off with the argb effect. Now, as you can see, my motherboard and RAMs. So this is actually how it looks like. Okay, if you want to control the argb on the motherboard and the RAMs, just click on Fusion. It will take you to this interface where it shows you the motherboard and the RAMs. Now, right now my argb effects are off. So by having this selected and sync, right, I just select. See, it's back on. I can change. See, it will just sync accordingly. Now, in the event, let's say you have done the changes on, oh, by the way, for the motherboard, right, the argb effect is only this strip. Okay, take note. It doesn't go towards the LCD and such. So this is actually what happened. Now, in the event, let's say you have done the correct color that you wanted on the motherboard strip and you want to change the RAMs, what you need to do is you do not sync both when you're doing the changes. Instead, select on RAMs, uncheck this sync. Oops. Okay, correct. Uncheck the sync on the motherboard, select on the RAMs, and you can change accordingly. See? And once this is done, right, uncheck this and check back the motherboard. See? You have a different set of argb effect. Now, I'm not going to go into details on how to do all this argb effect. Okay, let me just standardize everything. Have it red. Now, next thing to show you, all this above, you can make use of too. Now, I will start off with the fan control. You can manually, control the fans. Take for example, let's say you got the CPU fan and such. Now, it happened that my AIO over here, right, do not have a connector on the fan on the motherboard itself. If there is, right, you can select, see, all this, and to control according to the curve and such. Or you can set the profile over here, normal, full speed, or such, or maybe silent. Now, besides this, right, there's also performance. Now, this performance, in fact, you can do manual tweak on your CPU and also on your RAMs. Okay, right now I've actually not enabled it, based on the fact that on Windows itself, right, in order to make use of this, right, you got to trigger the okay, I did trigger, in fact, but lock it on BIOS. So you need to select on this device security and to disable the memory integrity. Okay, now there is a risk factor if you want to disable that, but if you are challenging enough, right, you want to make use of the application to control your RAMs and such, right, you can. So with this, right, I can control, see, I can control my CPU, I can control the RAMs if I want to. Okay, let's say I can, okay, probably I'll not touch the RAMs because I need to do illustration on the RAMs. So we can do all this, and of course you can set the alert, on the individual, so that once it reaches certain peak, right, it will prompt you on the screen itself stating that, hey, the voltage is too high, things like that. Now, besides this, right, there is one last application that I like to show you, which is this. Let's see, AI Snatch for AMD. What it does now, right now my RAMs are on export profile only. Okay, let me just show you. Okay, get this out of the way. Say this is my RAM profile. Only enable XMP. Sorry, only enable export. And when I trigger, right, okay, before I trigger, just to show you the memory timing, take a look at all these timings over here. Okay, this is by default expo profile. Okay, I've not done any manual tweaks on the the settings over here is all by default. Now with this say, right, let me just launch AIDA 64 and to show you one round on the memory benchmark. Now take note on this. I'm just saying that this function, right, the AI Snatch for AMD, right, what it does is actually it will calibrate with your RAMs and to search for the best algorithm to let it perform. So as mentioned, right, I've not done that. And take a look. See, latency 81, etc. This is only on X-Pro profile on. And with that beauty, right, of the AI Snatch for AMD, later you'll see something which is fantastic. And I'll show you how to actually trigger it. Okay, just let it run. So take note, latency 81.2 and the L3 cache is 12. So take note on this. Okay, let me just do a screenshot so later I can show you what's going on. Okay, let me just do this. Okay, take a screenshot on this so that later, oh by the way, I've already taken a screenshot on the RAM timing, which is Expo enabled, and this was the test been done. Later I will share with you the result, comparison result using the AI Snatch for AMD. Okay, right now I'm just going to trigger the application which I've installed, which is this. Now this is supposedly to be on my desktop, but I accidentally deleted it. Anyway, this will still run. So when you click on this, right, this is what you're going to get. Click on the X Pro AI Boost. Okay, and restart. In fact, I've already done this, so you will get something like this. In fact, it should be apply, not restart. Due to the fact that I've actually tested this out, that's the reason why it's called Restart AI. But right now, assuming that you have applied and this is done, right, click on it. See, predict result accomplished. So I'll need to actually trigger the Expo AI Boost in BIOS. So when you apply, it will tell you that you will need to boot to UEFI, which right now when I click on this, right, it will boot into UEFI. Okay, I have errors because based on the fact that I have the online camera going on to show you the argb effect. Okay, now take for example right now, once booted in UEFI, right, I will have to trigger the AI Expo Boost, and I'll show you the result once you've done that. So this is actually a one-click solution whereby it will calculate for you what is the best performance of your RAMs. Okay, this will take some time. Okay, see, as told you, I have enabled this. So right now I'm just going to disable, and as you can see, the Expo AI Boost. Now, if you have not done that step, which is the AI Snap for AMD, right, this will gray out. Even if you to disable the Expo Pro, Expo Pro. So with this say, right, I can enable it. Okay, I set. With this setting, right, I know that my RAMs is running on 6000 MHz. So right now I'm just going to save and to run that AIDA 64 Cinebench to let you have a look what is actually going on. So I'm just going to save right now. And I click on yes. Okay, it's loading up. It seems pretty fast to load up. It's in like the configuration from the AI algorithm detection. So later I'm going to show you the latency or what it does. So with this one touch, or so I say one click. Okay, let me just launch the AIDA 64. Okay, let me just launch this too. Okay, the benchmark on this, and looking at this, the okay, probably I'll show you again. Let me just minimize this. Okay, it's blocking. Now, see, the export profile is still on, but there are some slight changes as I can see. Now, if I were to do the summary right on the RAMs itself, see, just gonna take a screenshot on this so that later on we have a comparison. Okay, this is done. Now, to run the AIDA64 benchmark, which is this. Now, take a look at oh, this is not AIDA64, sorry. I'm just going to run this and take a look at the latency and the L3 cache. See, it improved significantly, whereby back then, right, the latency was 70.2 if I'm not wrong nanoseconds, but right now it's running on 68.7 nanoseconds. And for the rest, right, like the L1 and L2, I believe is the same, or maybe better. Just got to wait and see. Oh, it's even better. Previously it was 2.5 and this is 2.4. And looking at the L cache, right, it should be around, I guess, 11 or so. Oh, it's even better. See, 9.9 nanoseconds. So if I were to compare this, right, okay, with this, this was the previous stat. Okay, probably I would do, let's see. See, as you compare, this is after the AI Snatch for AMD. Okay, from 81.2 nanoseconds, it runs 68.7 nanoseconds. And for the L3 cache, 12.1 nanoseconds, this is running on 9.9 nanoseconds. It's so much faster. And if I were to compare this, right, okay, probably I'll just do this. Memory timing. Okay, this is even better. Now, as you can see, there are changes automatically. Take a look at the figures over here. This was without the AI Snatch. This is with the AI Snatch. Okay, probably I'll just pull it over here. Easier. See, you can take a reference. What the board does is, in fact, the AI have captured all the algorithm, and also to find the best performance based on what type of RAMs you're using. So this is actually the beauty of the AI. Okay, let me just show you here again of this AI Snatch, which is meant for the RAMs. See? So if you guys purchase this board, right, make use of this application. Is pretty neat. There is a very neat feature add-on to this motherboard, whereby in the past we know that for this X3D Turbo Mode, it will optimize for gameplay. Meaning to say, it's advantage for gamers to activate this mode, whereby it optimizes the game, the FPS and such, to have a fast response time and reaction. Now, on this board itself, Gigabyte have done additional step as to enhance this X3D Turbo Mode, known as the X3D Turbo Mode 2. Okay, as you can see, this is the interface in UEFI for the advanced mode, and this is the easy mode. Both having you to enable to trigger this, and the enhancement that what Gigabyte have done, right, is basically this too. In the past, as mentioned to you, is for extreme gaming mode, whereby gamers enjoy the optimization just for their gameplay. But on this board, Gigabyte have add on a function known as the max performance mode. This is meant for content creators or 3D renderers and such to have much better productivity experience. So having this two mode, right, you can set it on the UEFI, and on top of which, right, Gigabyte have add on an application whereby you can toggle this two mode in Windows. All is needed is just to download this application from the support page of this motherboard, where I'll leave the URL in my description. Then when you install it, on the lower right you have this icon. Okay, it's hidden over here. Anyway, when you right click, you'll be able to select max performance or extreme gaming. So it's actually on the fly. You don't have to reboot, you don't have to do anything. It's like you can set this on Windows itself, which is very practical. So as and when if you want to play games, right, you can just right click in Windows to set it to extreme gaming. If you want to do production work, you can right click again on the taskbar and to set to max performance. Now to check out the LAN connection, there are a total of 2, which has 10 gig, which you can see here. And of course I will test on the Wi-Fi. Starting off with the first LAN port. Let me just test this. And this is actually a local server. And expected having a 10 gig internet service provider, right, I should be getting around 8 gig. See? Which check out. And the upload will be slightly lower, probably about 7 gig, 6 gig, 7 gig. See? It did check out. And it's pretty strong. Now, if I were to switch to overseas, right, probably at Colombo, I will take the last one, which is 196 miles. If this service provider does have 10 gig, right, I should be getting around 8 gig plus. Yep, it does. And as for the upload, it will be more lower based on the fact of the distance. See? It's still hovering fine. Pretty strong. Now, this is on this network card, which is 10 gig. Now I'm just going to switch over here. I will just unplug this and to plug to the second one. Okay, probably I'll enable this. So we gotta wait for a while. It's going to identify, see, lost connection based on the fact that I disconnect, and to enable this. Once this is done, right, the screen will come back. Okay, now I'm just going to push it back all the way to local, and I run again. It should give me equivalent because both of these are of the same, same build and quality, same driver, but it's just that different port. See, it hovers around 8 gig for download, and for upload, yep, expected it's around 7 gig or 6 gig, and this does check out well. Now, if I'm going to scroll down all the way to 196 miles, which is this. Okay, let me just show you. See, again, it should be the same as what I got the stats from the first LAN port, which is around 8 gig for download, and 8 gig for download, and around 2.8 to 3 gig upload. So right now it's uploading. See, so it does check out too. Now the final one, which is the Wi-Fi. Based on the fact that you guys must understand, for Wi-Fi adapter, right, there are 2 different kind of Wi-Fi 7. One is of 160 megahertz channel bandwidth, the other is 320 channel bandwidth. And it happened that this Gigabyte is using the 320 megahertz channel bandwidth, which is the MediaTek MT7927. Okay, let me just disconnect this and to enable the Wi-Fi. So as you can see, both of my LAN port is without the cable, and right now to test on the Wi-Fi. Okay, again, I'm just going to select back to the local. Now, without failure, I guess it should get around, I would say 3 gig, 2 gig, 2.8 gig or 3 gig. So let's test it out. This is local server. See, I'm getting 3 gig. And for upload, it should be the same. So this is in fact a very strong card from MediaTek, which is the model 7927. And as you can see, the upload, so it's almost identical. Now I'm just going to change to the far away server, which is at Kuala Lumpur, 196 gig. Sorry, 196 miles. Too much of the PC gig. Alright, I should be getting the same. See, it's 3 gig for download, and for upload it should be around 2.6 gig and such. Oh, it's even better. See, so this proven that all the LAN port and the network card are doing fine. Just wanted to show you the Wi-Fi antenna, as I've not shown you during the B-roll. This is how nice it looks. It does have argb effect at the side, and a very neat thing, and it follows the motherboard argb. Now to show you the RAM training cycle of this motherboard. Now if you are migrating from Intel to AM5 platform or AM3 to AM5, this is expected. Do not expect when you piece up everything, right, when you boot up the system, you will just go straight into UEFI. For AM5 mechanism is pretty unique, whereby the motherboard will verify your RAMs, your processor, and etc. Now on my left, you have this screen that says no HDMI signal detected. In fact, this is the monitor that is connected to this motherboard, and on the lower right on the screen itself, you will see a stopwatch, where you can see over here. So the moment when I press the power button, I will press on the stopwatch just to show you how fast it will boot into UEFI for the very first time. That's right, for the very first time. So don't expect it to load straight to UEFI. Just to show you, here we go. Now this will take some time, as you can see that the digital debug LEDs, right, are cycling through. Now one thing good about this board, it has a LCD screen to show you what's going on, like verifying, or should I say initializing, the CPU, the GPU and such. And if you have AM5 motherboard that does not have a LCD, right, you can always refer to the digital debug code. It will cycle and it will take some time. And during this period of time, do not power down, do not clear CMOS and such. Just let it cycle, because based on the fact that it will verify all the components as necessary to have a stable and smooth transition throughout your whole operation. Now this particular board takes slightly longer, whereby this is an AI board, so it will calculate all the algorithm which is best to perform if you trigger the AI mode, which I'll show you later. Now as expected, this will take some time, probably I will say around 2 minutes, and it also depends on your RAMs. The higher capacity it is, the longer you will take. Probably I will say 3 to 4 minutes or maybe 5 minutes. But for this 32 gig kit, I would say that it will take around 2 minutes. So let's see how long it takes. Now as mentioned, this is only for the very first time. Okay, so once it's verified, right, when you reboot or even a cold start, it will be very fast. Okay, I bet it should be around right now. Okay, yep. So once it load into UEFI, okay, see, it takes 1 minute 47 seconds to load into UEFI. So right now, as I click on this, okay, this is the UEFI. I will talk about this UEFI at a later stage, or should I say at the end. Now as mentioned to you, right, once this is verified, okay, I'm just going to clear this clock stopwatch. Now I'm just going to press the reset switch together with the stopwatch, and you can see how long it takes to boot into UEFI after verification. Here we go. The screen is still showing UEFI, but it's in fact resetted. See, my screen right now is actually no HDMI signal detected, so it's actually cycling, and it will take some time. I would say it takes less than 45 seconds or so. And okay, it takes about 27 seconds. Now next online, I will be conducting a thermal test on the VRMs and such. And kindly note that my room temperature is 30 to 31 degrees Celsius. In fact, today is pretty nice. It's 30.2. And I'm testing this in a hot and humid country. Just want to test out how well the VRM hold and the processor hold and such. I'll be making use of all these specs to do the test. The 9950X processor coming from AMD, and the motherboard as usual, the X870E Aorus Xtreme X3D AI top. And for the RAMs will be a 32 gig kit, and these are the cache latency timing, the bus speed, and inclusive of the voltage. And instead of using the Expo profile, I'm making use of the AI boost, which is being calculated using the application that comes with this motherboard known as the AI Snap. And I did tone down the VSOC voltage to 1.11 volt. And as for the M.2, I'll be using a BiWin 2TB X570. This is a Gen 5 NVMe. And for the liquid cooler to cool the processor, I'm using the Gigabyte Aorus Waterforce X360. Now besides this, right, on UEFI I did the PVO2 limits, whereby I'm making use of the default PPT, TDC and EDC on this 9950X processor. And for the curve optimizer, since there are two stacks, for the first stack CCD 0, I set it to magnitude -15, and for CCD 2 is -10. And for curve shaper, these are my favorite, whereby I make use of the mid frequency, high frequency and max frequency, and each frequency have 3 different temperature, but I've set it equal. So for max frequency with all the temperature, I set it to -15. For high frequency, I've set it to -10, and for max frequency, I set it to -0.5. Now, application that I'll be using to test is mainly on Cinebench R23 and FurMark. The reason for this is that I did not plug in a discrete graphic card. Instead, I will be heavily stressed on the integrated graphic together with the processor, so this will generate heat surround the area like the VRM, the M.2, and inclusive of the DIMM slot area. And other applications like the Ryzen Master, this is to show you the peak clock speed, inclusive of tally the PPT, TDC and EDC as written over here. Then for this, right, it's showing you that how often that it touch 5 gig and such, and does it reach the max boost and such. Now having to say this, right, now for some reason I'm not able to pull the stats on the pump and the radiator fans, based on the fact that this liquid cooler, okay, is making use of a USB connection to the Gigabyte control center. That's why I pull the Gigabyte control center to show you the fan RPM and the pump. And it does not have a direct, the thing is that it does not have a direct connection to the motherboard fan headers, so that's why the readings is all from the Gigabyte control center. Now besides this, right, as I run, you will see the stats over here, things like the CPU temperature and such. Now I'm more concerned regarding about the motherboard, the VRM, the chipset, the RAMs, and the M.2. Now for the M.2, right, you have 2 temperature reading. For all Gen 5 M.2, you will have 2 readings. One is for the controller, the other one for the NAND. So as I run at the very beginning, okay, nothing much is picking up. So let me just pull to the last 3 minutes, which is around here. Okay, I'll let it run. As you can see, the graph on the core clock is pretty consistent. In fact, it's trying to push up. As you can see, there are dips, but they are far apart. So this is alright. Now having said this, right, this motherboard in fact does a very good job. As you look at this, right, on the motherboard itself is 38 degrees Celsius. Now mind you, my room temperature is 30 to 31 degrees Celsius, as you have witnessed when I show you my thermometer, digital thermometer. And for the VRM, right, known as the MOS or the MOSFET, is at hovering around 52 degrees Celsius or 51 to 52 degrees Celsius. And as for the chipset, the two X870E chipset is hovering around 52 to 54. And for my RAMs, it's not even hitting 50 degrees Celsius. And for the M.2, impressively, in fact, M.2 of generation 5, right, this should be above around 55 or 60. But based on the fact that it does very well. Now, do take note, I know that this motherboard do come with a RAM cooler and the M.2 cooler. The M.2 cooler is pretty thick. If I would to plug that in, right, all this temperature will drop, that's for sure. So this is actually without the thick heatsink which I showed you earlier, and the VRM cooler that's clipped on top of the RAM areas. So if I were to clip that, right, all this will lower down the temperature. So with this say, right, this is in fact a very sufficient motherboard that does its job very well. My thoughts about this Gigabyte Aorus Xtreme X3D AI top. They are good, they are bad, but overall the experience is very pleasant. Starting off with the construction. Now this board is built rock solid. The rigidity and is sturdy based on the fact that it has a backplate, and this backplate also acts as a cooling where you have the thermal pad touches the VRM, be it the rear and the side. Well done. And not only this, right, I like the pin stack on the VRM. It does proven to be the best cooling solution if you have this. In fact, Gigabyte, all their boards are designed this way. Very good cooling. And best part, the M.2 cooling, surprisingly shocked too. Now, on the benchmark itself, you have witnessed on the VRM, it doesn't hit 60 degrees Celsius. And for the M.2, I am placing a Gen 5 M.2, and yet it doesn't go above 55 degrees Celsius. And take a look at this heatsink. This is only this much. I guess it's because of the surface area that allows, oops, okay, never mind, that allows great dissipation of heat. And if I worry that this does not cater to dissipate heat, I don't have to worry. I can just change to this, where it is very diffy. See, look at the pin stack, it's very long, and it has an active cooling fan. And best part, this active cooling fan does not have a cable dangling out. It's just a one touch of these pins to the board. And once you connect this, right, you have better cooling on your M.2. Not only that, you have the argb effect that says Xtreme. And best part, it does not hinder the connection of your GPU. See, there is a gap. The only thing is actually only tall, that's it. So this is a very good solution. Well done. Now speaking about the M.2, right, looking at all this slot, I forgot to mention that the locking mechanism of all the M.2s are toolless too. See, it's by this spring loader lever. And best part, when you mount your M.2, right, you don't have to worry that your M.2 is being squished too tight or bent. Reason being, right, see, all this plate are with springs. See, cushion nicely. So when you sandwich, be it a single-sided M.2 or double-sided M.2, right, it will just squish nicely with the pads, be it at the bottom or the top, and you will just sit in place with the cushioning. Nice touch. I like this. Now, all the M.2 are toolless on the cover. Okay, like this. You just magnet and press it down. It's that simple. Same goes to the bottom section. Oops, this side. And on top of which, right, the design is very sleek. Okay, it's with no nonsense, all the pixel and all the, you know, the cubies and such. No, it's just very subtle, you know, cuts and such. I really appreciate this. Well done. And a bonus to this, if you do not need the bottom PCIe slot, it's being covered. If you need it, you just remove this. See, the design and aesthetic is fantastic. I like it very much. And for the locking mechanism, okay, not only the M.2 is toolless, but for the PCIe slot, right, it's easy access to remove. Be it the first slot and the second slot is controlled by this. So this is unlocked. See, this is locked. Well done. Now on top of which, right, this board, you can test it outside the motherboard, where you have all these features. The first one is clear CMOS, power button, and the reset switch. And as mentioned to you, right, I didn't show you the reset switch can be programmed, but you can do that on UEFI. You can either set it to boot in BIOS. Let's say you are in, let's say you have tested this outside the case, right, and it's on Windows itself, and you want to boot into BIOS, right, you just press this, program it, and press the reset switch, and you go to BIOS. Or you can program this to conceal or should turn off the argb effect on the M.2, which is here. Now, why I like this a lot, based on the fact that the clear CMOS button, right, since there is no jumper on this board to clear CMOS, the button is located over here, instead of locating at the back where you have this ignite button. Okay, this is something which I do not like when some of the motherboards, right, they have designed in a way that the CMOS button is over here and there are no jumper at the front. I will have to reach out and press, and accidentally I might just click on the BIOS flashback. I mean, I'm not talking about this board, but other boards. So this is one very good bonus point. Now, I keep on going through and forth because there are a lot of things I want to talk about this board, good and bad. Now, besides this, right, on the front, you have to be careful on the concealment of this. Okay, this is Manak on. Oops, it should be the other way around. A nice touch to cover all your messy cables like your 8-pin EPS and such. Okay, it blends in a suit. But when you remove this from the package, right, please do be careful, okay, as this might snap. This is not a flaw, it's just that, you know, personal due diligence, right? Just be careful. I'm warning you guys right now if you purchase this board. Alright. Now, the construction again, be it the RAMs or the PCIe slot, is with metal casting frame to enforce the rigidity of the slot. Well done. I like this. Next will be the LCD screen. 5-inch. This is a very good indication during the RAM training cycle. I enjoy looking at this more than the digital LED, which is located here. Okay, it shows you the verification on the CPU, your VRMs and such, even your RAMs. Then if there are any errors, right, you just prompt in. Then besides this, right, when you're in Windows, right, yes, I do appreciate all the sets being shown here with the Aorus crest and such. I hope that Gigabyte will do some improvement, as in to, you know, do a firmware or maybe an application so that we can customize the background and to relocate the stats on its position. This is a very wide, I mean, big, consider it as a big screen. You can allocate the stats instead of having a fixed format, which that is one of the downside, but overall this is very functional. Now, one bad point about this board are the front connection point, where you have tons of proprietary connectors. It's just a matter of fact of getting used to it. Yes, they are constructed very firmly. As you can see, it doesn't have 2 cables or, you know, 4 cables. In fact, it's the whole chunk. So when you pull in and out, right, it's firmly gripped. So this is not a problem. The problem is that these cables are still very thin. All of them. Actually, not really all. Some of them. So imagine that if you plug this in the case and you tuck these cables, right, in the event if you want to remove or adjust the board components and such, right, and have to fiddle with these cables, right, if your case have sharp edges, right, it might just cut and you might just break the cables. So this is one bad point. Probably reinforce them with something, one piece, or maybe sleeve it. I know it's thick, but at least there's some protection. Now another point is that, okay, let me place this here. The connection on the fans itself, I find that it's daunting. Okay, for the top fan where you have your AIO, the front fan intake or the side intake for the OL11 you know, case, and for the bottom fans, not a problem. All the cables are easily routed to the front. But for the rear fan, you have to route all the way from the back to the front, either to the top or to the bottom, which I find okay, a matter of fact of getting used to it. Then another point is that the argb connection point, yes, is great. You have 1 point split into 5, and these are reachable to the various location where you have fans with argb, not an issue. But the thing is that you still split the cable, so it kind of like messy. This is what I feel. Another point I'd like to point out is in fact the RAM area. Now if you use it for normal, not an issue, but if you overclock it and you worry that your RAMs are overheating, right, good thing that they do provide you with this so-called RAM cooler where you can just attach it. Just make sure that you remove this before you attach this. Now my only problem is the fans. As you can see, this is drawing air in to cool your RAMs, and this is right at the top where your top, if you have the top liquid AIO at the top, right, the fans are pulling warm air out of the case, and this is pulling in. So there's a fight over here. I would prefer if Gigabyte can rethink about this, have the fans right located at the top, so at least the air drawing in right is from the front where you have the intake of air, rather than to do it at the side, or should I say at the top. Other than that, now this board is meant for 3 different type of users. In fact, it's an all-rounder board, to be honest with you. First of all, content creators, tons of high bandwidth, or should I say high transfer rate ports. You have 40 gig, 20 gig, 10 gig, and all these are USB 3.2. Okay, fantastic. You won't miss out on anything, inclusive of the front where the transfer rate is 20 gig too, with this too, the Type-C port. And if you want more storage, not transferring, you can populate all the M.2. There are a total of 5 M.2s, inclusive of plugging 2 SATA, maybe 3.5 inch or 2.5 inch hard disk. Not an issue, all will operate nicely. Now, to answer one of my viewers who have sent me an email, hey Kyo, are you going to do a review on this board? Yes, I am. To Mike Bradley, you have asked me this question: if I populate all the M.2 with the SATA connection, will there be an issue of intermittence drop and such? My answer is no. But as I explained to you, right, for the SATA to run at full, not a problem. But the problem comes with the M.2. If you realize I mentioned, okay, imagine you populate all this, right, it will work, not a problem. But when you are using the USB version 4.0, okay, your fourth M.2, which is controlled by the CPU, this will drop speed at X2. So take note on this. And if you happen that if you populate both the third M.2 slot and last slot I've tested, okay, the priority will go to your PCIe, and your the third M.2 right will be disabled. So take note on this. Make sure if you want to make use of all this, right, okay, you still can use the version 4.0, but just note that the fourth M.2 slot, right, which is Gen 5, right, you won't run on a max speed of X4. Instead, you'll be X2. And make sure if you want to use the third M.2 slot, do not connect anything on the PCIe slot at the last section. So take note on this. And also for this, right, this is running on X2, not X4. So something to be mindful. Now, back to where I was as I finish off the content creation. You have tons of storage, you have tons of transfer stuff and such. Next will be for gamers. Excellent board for gamers, as there's a switch in UEFI to toggle the X3D Turbo Mode. Okay, you can either go to the UEFI, or even better, on Windows itself on the go, you can just right click on the lower task manager and to set Extreme Gaming, and that will, the AI will calculate everything for you and to have the best FPS and such. Now, I'm not tested on the games, but on the performance side for content creation, ooh la la, fantastic. Why? I've shown you the RAMs itself using the AI Snatch application to calibrate and to calculate the RAMs, how well you will perform with the certain settings. All are done AI. I've shown you the latency. By default, just having the expo on, right, my latency for L1 is 80, okay, and for L3 I guess it's around 10 or such, or 11. Once I've activated AI Snatch and to populate that profile onto UEFI, guess what, my latency is at 60 over unit per second for L1, and as for the last L3, right, it's 9.9 unit seconds. You'll witness that. If you don't believe me, you can rewind and check it out, okay? And on top of which, right, the processor, I can set it to performance mode instead of the extreme gaming, because right now Gigabyte have done the two modes. So with the performance of your RAMs and your processor, fantastic. I can compound this video over here, right? If I use my old machine to do it, it's gonna take like 30 minutes or so, but for this, right, it's within the 18 minutes mark. Okay, trust me on this one. Now, of course, I did a dry run before I talk about this, so these are the good point of the AI mechanism on this board. Now, last but not least, I was saying that for gamers, for content creators, for overclockers, same thing. You have more than enough 110 ampere choke on the 24 phase, 110 on the 2 amp, the plus 2 SoC choke for your RAMs, and 60 amp for the rest. It's more than enough for you to overclock, not a problem. And with all this cooling solution, right, that I mentioned, right, you can overclock, no problem. It will be fantastic. But do be mindful when you overclock, don't exceed, and it might damage your board or damage your processor. So do take note on this. Okay, wow, very long. Now, the MSRP of this board is all about, I can only give you a rough estimation, is about 1.2k to 1.3k USD. And for Singapore, right, I've checked, it's around 1.7 to 1.8k. Now, this is actually a hefty and expensive board, but it's of premium quality. And all the things that I check out, one click, one switch, that's it. And you can just operate, optimizing it, and you don't have to waste time figuring out the RAM training, the RAM timing or the processor, like setting on the PVO tools and such. All these are auto. So with this said, I'd like to thank Gigabyte to have provided this loan unit for me to share with everyone. It's an honor that I can play with this board, and to Tech Dynamic to have done the arrangement on the delivery. Now, if you guys are new to my channel, welcome to my channel. If you like my content, do remember to subscribe and to click on the notification bell button. Now, one last favor I'd like you guys to help me out. I want my channel to grow, so if you can and you like this content, help me to click on the like button. With this said, I thank you very much. Take care, goodbye, see ya. I'll show you on the interface of the UEFI. Basically, there are two modes, the easy mode and the advanced mode. Now, for easy mode, it's mainly one click and go. And as for advanced mode, if you are into tuning your RAMs, tuning your processor, and to run the PVO tool and such, this is the place where you should be using. Now, having said this, right, be it whether the easy mode or the advanced mode, it's best that you know the shortcuts, whereby when you press on F1, it will show you all the shortcuts of how to toggle in between the interface and such. Take for example, let's say right now it's actually the easy mode. I want to toggle to advanced mode, and over here is F2, which says advanced mode. So I'll just press on F2, it will hit straight to the advanced mode. And to go back to easy mode, I press F2 again. Now on the easy mode, you have all this sub menu at the top. Favorites, this is where you pin your favorite or often used configuration description over here, which I will show you later. Next will be load default. In the event if you did any changes over here and you want to redo the whole thing, instead of having to click individually to reset it, you can just load default, which is the F7 key, or you can click here. Next will be save and exit. Of course, when you do all your settings done properly, right, you will save and exit and you will boot to Windows. QFlash, this is meant for you to update the BIOS using the UEFI interface, which I do not suggest you to use this. In the event, let's say, there's a power surge and power surge or such, right, you might prick the board. I would to strongly advise you to make use of the BIOS flashback button on the rear I/O, inclusive of the UEFI, or should I say the BIOS USB port. And of course, you will need the firmware. Now, next is the SPD info, which are meant for your RAMs. So we'll show you all the populated DIMM slot with all the JTAG and the Expo and the XMP profile. So same goes to the second slot, which is B2. Next will be the SPD setup. So when you click on this, right, you can, when you did certain configuration, right, you can save your profile or to load or even to clear. So this is actually what it meant. Now on my top left, these are the info whereby you show you the motherboard, the BIOS version, the processor that you're using, the RAM that you have, or should I say fixed into the system, and of course the Argisa version. Now on the Argisa version, I would to strongly advise you guys to update it, because every new version Argisa, right, it will improve on RAM training cycle and such. But do take note, when you update this, you will need to update the BIOS. But do take note, when you update the BIOS, right, make sure that it's not on beta version. Now on the lower left, this is where the DIMM slot are. As I populated the 32 gig kit, as you can see, A2 and B2. Now at the bottom, again, one click, this is meant for you to set the Expo profile or XMP profile. And earlier on, I show you in Windows where you have this the AI snack, yep, that will populate a profile, or should I say the system, right, will calculate how your RAM perform and to maximize the performance. And once that's done, right, you will port into the Expo AI boost. So this is where I can actually set it. So if you disable this, right, meaning you say I'm not going to use the AI boost that is calculated by the system, you can enable Expo profile. Alright, I would strongly advise you to use the AI snack. I think it's snack, yeah, that's right. The AI snack application to let the system calculate how well your RAM perform, because each individual RAMs, right, they have different characteristics and it might or might not perform. So it strongly depends on how you configure it. So I do advise you to use the AI snack application, do the calculation, and to port over here and to enable it. And I know that my RAMs are 6000 megahertz, so I'll just do this. So when you do this, right, once you save the profile and you reset, or should I say boot into Windows, right, the system itself will calculate out everything, which I'll show you later. Then the Expo or the XMP high bandwidth support. Well, if your RAMs are super tight timing and have a very good bin, you can try this out. Okay, I've tried this and my RAMs can't take it, it crashes. So I will just disable. So at the event, if you were to use this, right, and it doesn't perform or it crashes, right, you have to disable this. Core tuning configure. Now this, I'm not too sure how this works, so I'll just leave it auto. Right at the center here, you have the CPU frequency, you have the temperature, and the CPU voltage. Now the thing is that when you click on CPU frequency, right, you can set, see, the frequency that you want, and of course the ratio, and of course the CPU ratio over here. So you can just click and set. I'm not going to touch this, I'll just leave it auto. The CPU temperature, you can set it, on the fans itself, right, how it's going to be controlled and such. So this is just a show of what it does. Then for the CPU voltage, you can also set the voltage, see, but this will be a fixed voltage, so take note on this. This is heavily meant for overclockers. Now for memory frequency, you can also set, since it's disabled, right, the okay, you can set this too on the multiplier, which I will not touch since the AI Snap have calculated everything nicely for me. Now coming to temperature, okay, this has got to do with your system fan. Okay, this system temperature is actually your motherboard temperature, so you can set the system fan that is on the motherboard, which is meant for your case fan. Now right below here, okay, due to the fact that I'm using the Gigabyte AIO that does not have a header that plug to the CPU underscore fan or the CPU underscore op, so it's controlled by the USB connection, okay, through the application. But if you do have AIO, take note, for radiator fans, plug it to CPU fan. For pump, plug it to CPU underscore op. And you have to do some configuration. You have to go to the smart fan 6 or press F6, okay, to go to this interface. So as mentioned to you, CPU fan, this is your radiator fan. Make sure that you set this, okay, under the CPU fan control mode to PWM, okay, and you can set the profile over here. So it's all up to you. You want it silent, you want it normal, these are the profile, or you want it full speed, or you can set it manual. When you click on manual, right, see, this thing will highlight. Okay, let me just show you again. Take note on the section over here. If I set it normal, see, it's not highlighted. If you set it to manual, see, this highlighted. So this is where you can set based on the RPM, based on the percentage that you run. Take for example, let's say at temperature 25 degrees Celsius, right, I want to run the fan with PWM percentage at, I would say, probably 45. So you can key in and this graph will follow, or you can manually use this. See, it will show you this, in fact, is the percentage of the RPM or PWM, and this at the bottom, this is the temperature. So let's say at temperature 28 degrees Celsius, take for example, I want to ramp up, see, it will tell you over here, I want to ramp up the PWM to 50% or so, okay, probably around here, and you just leave it. You don't have to click on the apply, it will be auto applied. So this is actually how it works. Now this is only for the radiator fans. Of course, for the AIO pump, where you connect to the CPU op, click over here. Now you will have a PWM curve. I would advise for pump, right, do not do this kind of curve, because reason being, right, for AIO pump where you gush the fluid through the tube and through the fin stack, right, if you have lower RPM, right, there might be gunk stuck to the fin stack. So I would advise to run at consistent, and at all times, right, normally I will just run the pump at full speed. And how do I actually do it? I will set this, okay, I'll first set this to PWM, okay, not setting to auto, but having the CPU op speed control, I'll set it to full. Okay, if you find this is very noisy, okay, you can set manual, but instead of having 100, right, okay, the PWM 100, right, okay, let me just set this to 80. Okay, probably it won't go 95 degrees and so, but on the probably 7 degree mark, right, you can set it to 80. So set all this to 80. It will be a flat line. Okay, so at all times your pump will run at 80%. Right, this is how it works. So make sure you do this. Now I forgot to mention that for CPU underscore fan, if you do have the radiator fans plugged in, right, I would advise you to set this to enable, which is the CPU fan failure warning. So in the event if your radiator fans failed to spin or such, a warning signal will prompt to you. Okay, so this is the setting on the fans itself. Now this is the indication on your SSD and your M.2. And right at the bottom where you have the quick access, you have the resizable bar and the CSM support, which we do not use, and the operation mode you prefer. That means to say every time when you boot up in UEFI, right, which mode would you want? I would set this to advanced mode because I'm an advanced user, so I don't really do one click. You can, set it to easy mode, up to you. And when you set it to auto, right, meaning to say it will remember the last time when you boot into UEFI, be it the easy mode or the advanced mode. Then all this, I don't have to talk much about it. ERP is actually the energy saving phase, the onboard controllers. Now for theme, okay, I've tried. When I set, you can change the layout and the color of the UEFI. I've tried the Aorus BR25, which is totally white. Okay, and when I try on grayscale, right, my system hang. I wouldn't know why I couldn't toggle this. I would have to clear CMOS. But anyway, I like this interface. I'll just leave it as Aorus 25. Now coming to 80-port display mode, this is the digital LED on your motherboard. By default, it will read error codes and such, so it will do the RAM training cycle and such. And since this is a equipped LCD motherboard where it shows you the verification on your CPU, GPU and such, right, you can make use of this digital LED to display all this temperature. Your VRM temperature, your system temperature and such, or CPU temperature. So at all times when you let's say for example you set it to CPU temperature. So when you save and reboot, right, it will not show you the error code. I mean the digital cycle code. It will just show you the temperature on your CPU. Else the verification and such, right, will be reflected on the LCD as per normal. So this is actually what it meant. Now next will be on the top right, the question mark. This is actually F1, which I show you all the short keys for snapshot. Now if you were to populate something to guide you guys, if you want to caption this, this interface, right, you can just press here or press F12. When you click on this, right, you will say that the image will be saved. See, so I have a thumb drive which is located here, and I did a screenshot. So make sure if you want a screenshot of, let's say, the interface that you wanted, right, make sure that you have a thumb drive plugged to your motherboard. So in the event, if let's say you go to this and you want to take a screenshot of the whole thing, instead of taking your mobile to take the screenshot, right, you can just press F12 or click on the camera. So when you press on F12, right, see, it will just save. Okay, back to easy mode. Next will be the search magnifying glass. So you know that your board have certain function. You can do a quick search. So when you click on this, right, take for example, let's say fan. See, it will show you the fan control. Let's say you want to do the PPT. See, it will show you, or even the EDC. So you can just go directly and to set it. Now next will be the language. You can change the language. You want Chinese, it will be Chinese, see, and etc. I will set it back to English. Now as for the time date, I don't have to tell you this. You can click and to set your time date. On the advanced mode, this is how it looks like, and the sub menu at the top, I will start from favorites. Now favorites is meant for you to save your often used function. Take for example, I'll just click on tweaker, and let's say I often use this, highlight on it and press insert. So when you press insert, right, there will be a favorite, or should I say a star, beside the function. So when you click on favorites, right, it will be listed over here. Now you can choose to remove it by pressing insert again. This will delete off from the favorite. Or in the event, let's say you have done the favorite, I press insert and it's listed over here. You can remove from here too. Take for example, you don't want this, you just click on the insert key. So this is actually how it works. Now come to the tweaker. There are tons of things that you can play with. This I'll leave it auto. For overclockers, right, probably you want to use this to change the clock control and such. Same goes to this, the PCIe clock, the CPU ratio and such. And oh, this is actually to control, I think it's per CCD. You can do that. Okay, probably your first 8. Okay, I'm using a 9950X that has dual CCD, so you can do it like first 8 set to run at probably 54 or such. Then the next set will be slightly lower, things like that. But for this, I'll just leave it all core. Active OC tuner, I have no idea what this is. I'll just leave it. This is meant for the integrated graphic tuning, which I will not touch to. Now, I know some of you will say that, oh, I want to do the PPO limits. I just not going to find every single core, or maybe manually configure everything. There is a short way of doing it, whereby you make use of the precision boost overdrive enhancement. So you can click on this and there are certain levels. Now based on the fact, you can give it a hit and try, because you wouldn't know how well your processor bin is, so you have to try. Take for example, I want to set my processor not to run above 80 degrees. So under the 80 degrees, which is down here. Now for your information, this is 70 degrees, this is 80 degrees, and this is 90 degrees. So there are certain levels. You can select it and run, do some tests and such. If it fails, lower it down and lower it down, or lower it down. Alright, so this is actually how it works. Now eco mode, I believe that some of you will just use it, but it will just put down the performance in some ways. So I'll just leave this as disabled. Next will be the X3D mode, or should I say the X3D Turbo Mode. As earlier on I mentioned, if you have missed that, you can just rewind to that section where it says X3D Mode 2 on my timestamp. I mentioned that Gigabyte have enhanced this X3D Turbo Mode, which has 2 modes. One is for game mode and the other one is for extreme performance mode. Next will be the advanced CPU settings. So these are the things that you can set. Okay. Now, as mentioned to you right now, I'm using the Expo AI boost, which you saw on the easy mode. You can disable this and to enable. Okay, let's say I disable this and to enable this. Okay, I'm not going to enable this because, as mentioned to you, I allow the system to detect what is best, because I'm going to show you something. Now it's 6,000. So when you set this, right, it will auto fine tune for you. Now next will be core tuning configuration. I'll leave it auto. System memory multiplier, this is up to you to set. The thing is, when I trigger this Expo AI boost, right, I mean the application that I may use, the AI Snap, it captures everything, whatever best for your memory, right, you will just plug to here and automatically it will set based on my RAM stick, the speed. See, the Infinity Fabric for my 6000. Okay, the F, I would say that this is actually the F clock. You have 2000, and the U clock is equal to M clock. This is 1:1 ratio. This is auto. When I trigger this, right? Next, on the advanced memory setting, which I show you with all the memory sub timing. Okay, these are the ones it triggered. See, So it will automatically trigger for you without having you to manually it will trigger for you without having you to manually key in. If you manually key in, you can too, you see, you can do that. So it's actually a one click and go, and you have good performance, and you have weakness that the latency, right, the L3 cache is 9.9 uniseconds, and for the top L1 latency, right, I remember it should be around 60 something if I'm not wrong. So that is how fantastic the AI Snap is. Okay, besides this, right, under the advanced memory settings, where I show you the memory subtiming, again, this is the info on all the JDAX on your Expo profile and your XMP profile. And again, you can set manually and to save the profile or to load the profile. Now for this, right, some of you will just use this as the memory context restore. You find that it's a hassle. The first time RAM training cycle done, right, you wouldn't want it to do it again and again and such. Majority of you, or should I say, not majority, I should say that minority of you will just disable this. So you don't want the hassle of waiting for the system to boot, since it's already verified or you have configured. I would advise strongly not to disable this. Make sure to enable it, because based on the fact that from time to time, right, when you update the OS patches, or even update the BIOS, right, you will need this to enable to do the RAM training cycle again. So I just leave it to auto, do not touch. So this is all about the Twinkle. Next will be the setting, where you have the platform power. So these are the things that you can set. Okay, and IO port, showing you what is being enabled and such. Now for IO port, there's one thing I would disable, which is my high definition audio controller. Based on the fact that I'm using the audio interface, things that you do not need over here, right, it's best to disable them so that the boot time will be faster. Okay, just a hint. Anyway, set back to enable. So I'm not going to go through all this. You can have a look. Okay, these are to show you the info. Oh, Gigabyte utility downloader configuration. Earlier on, I showed you that upon the first time when you install a fresh copy of Windows 11, when you boot into Windows, right, there will be a prompt for you to install the Gigabyte Control Center. So this is actually what it meant. It's always at enable. Okay, USB configuration. So you can actually set over here. NVMe configuration. In fact, NVMe configuration, when you click on it, right, it will just show you the stats, and you can do a short test and such. Okay, SATA configuration. Now, if you do have SATA hard disk, right, 2.5-inch hard disk or 3.5-inch hard disk, you have lots more function over here. Okay, and one thing good is that this board has a auto function whereby even your hard disk is plugged to the SATA, you can just make use of the Windows, I think it's the USB icon, to eject out the SATA, and you can just unplug, as there is a hot plug function which is enabled. Okay, network stat. Now I wouldn't know what this is. I don't really configure this, but just to show you the real tech. Okay, this is the 10 gig NIC. There are total of 2, so we can just see over here just information and such, the MAC address and the second MAC address and such. Next will be the miscellaneous. So this is actually where you set the link speed. Take for example your first PCIe slot, you're running a GPU of Gen 5. So let's say you're running a 5000 series graphic card, you know it's Gen 5, you can just set this to Gen 5. And same as the rest, the second PCIe slot and such. Okay, these are the things that you can set. Now at the bottom section, I wouldn't touch this because this TPM module, right, in fact, Windows 11 will require it, so don't touch this. Once you touch this, right, you might not be able to boot to Windows, so take note on this. Then for AMD CBS, things to configure, like your net BIOS, this is where your graphic card is and such. See the configuration on the graphic card, the audio, and etc. Now the rest I wouldn't know what they are for, but on SMU, right, now for 9950X3D, there is this section called CPPC, where you can set to driver or you can set to cache. If you set to cache, right, that is meant for you to do work. I mean, majority of it is actually for workload, but if you're playing games, right, leave it to driver. Somehow this processor does not have that because it's not a X3D processor, it's just a 9950X. So this is actually where I was at. Other than that, SoC miscellaneous control, just to show you, I wouldn't have a clue what this is. I will not touch this. The PROM21 chipset, all this you can configure if you know what they are for. So this is the AMD CBS. Now coming to this section, AMD overclocking, things that I will touch, which is the precision boost overdrive. Make sure you click on accept. Okay, I will not touch on manual CPU overclocking and such, or the DDR Infinity Fabric. Instead, I'll be touching on the precision boost overdrive, and also another section whereby I will check, which is the SoC forward / uncore OC mode. I will set this to enable, as this got to do with your RAMs and your processor on the Infinity Fabric calculation, as you can see over here. Okay, you can read this. I'm not going to talk much about this. So on precision boost overdrive, the usual suspect. So these are the things that I will set. Okay, I'll set this to advanced. As you can see, there is auto, disable, enable, or advanced. I will normally set this to enable. Then having the PBO limits to manual, and all these are the configuration that I've done. Now, precision boost overdrive scaler, I know that some of you will go to the extent of 10x, but it's going to deteriorate your, or should I say degrade your processor, because by having a higher scaler, yes, you can push the clock frequency, but it takes up more V-core, and sometimes it exceeded 1.35 volt. So do take note on this. I at all times will just either leave it auto or 1x. Okay, not on 10x, it's too much. But anyway, I don't really configure this, so I'll just set it to auto. CPU boost clock override, again, a lot we'll just put positive, and we'll put 200 plus 200. Now you can do this, but I can tell you that by placing this, right, you're drawing much more power, and the performance gain, right, on your against your default PBO settings, right, there is no much gain, and you are drawing more power. If you guys want to know more about this, right, you can actually look up my PBO limits tuning, which I will leave in my description. You can check it out, as I explained to you why I'm not using this, and it does show you the stand that, you know, it's not good having this boost clock override to plus, you know, 200 and such. In fact, it's redundant. But if you want to, you can set it. It's up to you. Okay, I'll just disable this. Now, platform thermal throttle. This is whereby you lock the processor at a certain temperature. Take for example, let's say you want to set it to 80 degrees. Okay, you can set it. And when the processor reaches 80 degrees, right, it will lower down the frequency for you automatically, so that you will not, you know, you will not overheat your processor. So this is actually an auto function. Normally I'll just set it to auto. Anyway, I know that my processor will not heat, you know, above 90, so I'll just leave it auto. GFX curve optimizer, I will not touch. This is got to do with your integrated graphic on the processor. curve optimizer, which I will do. Since it's a dual CCD, right, my favorite way of doing, be it a 9950X or 9950 X3D, a safe gauge that I'll place is CCD 0 as minus 15, negative negative magnitude minus 15, and the CCD 1 as negative magnitude 10. This will confirm will run smoothly on any any 9000 series processor and not overstretching. Some will go to the extent 40, 50 and such. In fact, this is killing your processor in the long run, because imagine that you're running you're pulling a rubber band, elastic band. Okay, stretching at the middle point, you can last longer. But if you stretch all the way, it's like having the tension, right? And it's holding throughout the few months, right? Either one of this day that it loses its tension, whereby you will have instability in your system, or it will snap, which you damage your processor. Okay, this is a layman term that I often use. So don't overstretch your processor, it's no good. Next will be curve shaper. I will use this too, starting with the mid frequency, the high frequency, and next frequency. Now I'm not going to go into details on how I set this. If you interested to know, as I mentioned, right, it's in my description. You can click on it and it'll take you, and I fully explain what this do. Alright, so this is precision boost overdrive. Other than that, I wouldn't touch at all. Okay, this is the AMD overclocking. Now PC health. This is to show you the stats, the voltages and such that is running. Okay, oh yeah, I forgot to mention the SoC voltage. Okay, let me just go back to the I've done with settings, all of it. Now going back to tweaker. I've forgotten about this section over here. So sorry about this. Now, for dual CCD, right, for 9950X or 9950 X3D, right, I wouldn't advise you to do the offset. If you are running a 9800 X3D or 9700 or even a 9600, right, since it's a 6 core or 8 core, you can do the offset. Okay, there's a way to actually do the offset. Oops, not here. Okay, there are no offset on this. This is interesting. To be honest with you, I'm not really familiar with the Gigabyte board. Okay, guess there's no offset for this, so we just leave it as auto, don't touch. And of course, if you want to fix the voltage, you can do so, no problem. Alright, now B-core SoC, this is very important, whereby take a look, I've set it to 1.110 volt, and as the benchmark run, right, it draws up to 1.164. I'm very careful regarding about the drawn voltage of the RAMs communicating with the processor. So normally I will not set this to 1.18 or 1.19, because I know that it's going to draw 1.2 volt or 1.25 volt. A safe voltage, right, for the SoC, right, is in fact is 1.25. Okay, and next is 1.35. But in the long run, right, it will, I would say, degrade your RAMs and your processor. So at all times I will just run it sufficient, which I know that 1.15, 1.16 will be just nice. So that's why I set this and observe the runs. Okay, into details again, if you were to watch the content on the PBO limits or the curve optimization, right, you understand that what I'm trying to say. So just to let you know that I won't be running this B-core SoC as 1.2. Okay, I will run it lower. Best target is to hit it at 1.164 or 1.172. Okay, this is just a minor adjustment. And to other motherboards, right, This vCore SoC is known as BDD-CR_SoC. Other than that, all this I won't touch. Advanced voltage settings. I believe this is the... Nope. Okay. Not familiar with this, not going to touch. CPU and VRAM settings. Okay, load line calibration. Now, this you can set. I am not familiar with the load line calibration over here, so I'll just leave it auto. Same goes to the SoC load line calibration, which is got to do, as I mentioned to you, the vCore SoC, which is the memory and the processor, or should I say the VRM. There's at the top. Okay, for VRM you have phases like, 14 plus 2 plus 1. The middle one is in fact this. Okay, so we can set the load line calibration. I'll just leave it auto. Okay, this is done. Settings, I'm done. System info, showing you all the stats on your motherboard, your processor. Okay, just like the easy mode, you can set your date, time and such. Can I? Oh no, you have to set it over here. Okay, so sorry about this. As mentioned to you, right, Gigabyte board, I'm not really familiar with the features. Alright, the access level, etc. Plug-in device info, as you can see over here. The SPDIF, the JDAC on the Expo profile and the XMP profile. Now, again, you can set the theme. As mentioned to you, if you set to Aorus BR25, right, this will be total white. Okay, the interface will be white and the wording will be in gray. And for me, when I tried grayscale, right, it did not work. In fact, my system hang. I had to do clear CMOS. Anyway, I'll just leave it here as mentioned. Then you have this 80-port display mode, which is the digital LED display. Again, I'm just going to repeat. You can set this to, to show the temperature of your CPU, your VRM, your system temp and such. In fact, it's this three. But at all times, I'll just leave it to port display mode, based on the fact that during the cycling, when you boot up the system from cold, right, as in like, your system is shut off and you turn it on, right, you want to see those figures running so that you know that your system is communicating with the component and such. Other than that, Q flash this again to update the BIOS using UEFI. Using this interface. Next will be boot. Now, I have plug USB drive here. Assuming these are all the M.2s and such. Okay, if you want to boot accordingly, let's say for example, this is on Windows. The second option, this is on, let's say, Linux. If you want to move this, you can. See? So you push this up. Just double click it, and or maybe you can actually enter it. See? You can select which is the priority boot. Then followed by this. I don't have to say much. This is by default. CSM support and such, I will not touch. These are legacy stuff. And a lot of you like to do fast boot. But the thing is that when you do fast boot, right, you can't toggle back to UEFI. Okay, so take note on this. Then you have to clear CMOS. Administrative password and user password. Now, if you are in control, you are the one controlling this system itself, right? And you wouldn't want your sibling to touch the UEFI. You can set a administrative password just for you to know. And if you do allow your siblings but don't want to touch your profile, you can set a user password, meaning say for them to set on their profile and not yours. Now, coming to this secure boot, this is very important. If you are playing Valorant, the game, you need to come to this and set this to custom. Okay. Now, when you're doing this, right, when you're playing the game, and imagine that you need to reformat your hard disk and to do to install a fresh Windows 11, make sure you come back here and set it to standard. Okay. If not, your M.2 gonna have some problem to install the Windows 11. For this, I'll just leave it. Preferred operating mode. Again, you can set when you boot into UEFI whether you want easy mode or advanced mode. Last but not least, save and exit. All these are self-explanatory. I don't have to mention much, or you can come to here and to boot according to the thumb drive and such directly.